Hey, everybody. We've got the sounds. We've got the silence. We don't have any silence. And we're back. And we're black. I'll be white black. Hey, everybody. If you're there, say hi.
Just what do you think you're doing, Dave?
And we're black. Ismael. Oh, look, we've just scared up some new viewers.
Call me Ishmael.
There once was a ship that put to sea. The name of the ship was a belly of tea. The winds blew up her bow, dipped down below my billy boys blow. Soon may the wellerman come to bring us sugar and tea and rum. One day when the tonguing is done, we'll take our leave and go.
Johnny Depth. Was it that? Hey, everybody. Welcome back. We're back. We got the sound. We sound better now, don't we? We've got some bass in our voice. We got some Barry White. Hey, Ismael. How you doing? Hello. Everybody shows back. I won't touch anything. I'm not going to touch anything because it's just 12 frames per second. Look at me. I look like a robot. I'm not even doing the... But...
Just what do you think you're doing?
Uh-oh. My computer just needs a minute. Everything will work out. Hello, Judella. Thank you for saying hello. I appreciate it. If you're lurking, you can always do the lurk indication, and that helps. Does it sound better now? Do we sound better? I'm not going to touch any buttons. I'm not going to touch any buttons. I'm just going to talk to... Is that Will? Who goes there? Is that Will?
It is I. It's I. I'm hearing things.
Well, there are things now. We sound like we're on the air again. This sounds like a real... Listen to my sultry voice now. I've got it EQ'd perfectly. We sound way better, don't we? Welcome, Judy. Welcome, Lori. Welcome, Ismael. And Will. Will, you have something to say? You know, nowadays everybody want to talk like they got something to say, but nothing comes out when they move their lips, just a bunch of gibberish. And MFers act like they forgot about Dreyer. But if you don't forget about Dreyer, subscribe.
You need to make that intro.
I should.
That should be your intro.
That will be my intro. And I'll just play.
Don't.
I'll just go at the end of it. MFers act like they forgot about Dreyer.
Yes, as Picard would say, make it so.
Make it so. Indeed. Yes, I gotta equalize our voices. So give me a check there. Check your volume there.
Check like 1 2. Check 1 2 1 2. Check.
Our volumes are comparable. Now go ahead. Now tell us lay into us. What do you got? What's Will thinking?
I don't know. You said something, and I wanted to jump in with something funny about something you said, and I have no recollection. So,
well,
that is so fast.
Tell us what. I'm sure it was hilarious.
I still have the old chats open. Let's see. Let me look at the old chats and see what was happening.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, you could do this too at home. You could watch the old episodes. You could download them. You could listen to the podcast. You could do all kinds of stuff. And if you do that, I get a penny. Don't you want to give me a penny? Don't make sure it's heads up penny, because that's better luck.
You were riffing on Wilford Brimley and diabetes and him always looking old.
He was old. How old was he in 1984 when he was in the movie Cocoon with Barrett Oliver?
Probably like 50-something.
I guarantee you he was 30-something. Because he would die just last week.
He was old. Yeah, but maybe he was like 90. Betty White was old in the 80s too.
Let me ask Siri. How old is Wilford Brimley? He's dead though. 85. He was 85, so minus 40, he was 45. Boom! Maybe he was... No, you know what? He looked like he was 900. He had diabetes though, the whole time.
To the head for me.
I'll tell you.
Is this Wilford?
I think you went over. So then, by the Price is Right rules,
Yeah.
Price is wrong.
Close with no cigar.
Yeah, indeed. So tell us, Will. What do you think about? Now, I know that I clarified it for
remember.
everybody. I know that I said to everybody, listen up, war is bad, you shouldn't do it. Now, do you have a different opinion on that? Go ahead.
So, I am a peacenik by nature, but
Yeah.
I understand the importance of self-defense.
Better than being a beatnik.
But here's my take.
Poor Nick. Go ahead.
I got my own take, and I can talk about it in ways that make it sound different than what it is. But I'll be frank. No riddles or enigmas here.
I'll be Steve. Okay, go.
Based on the little knowledge I have about what's going on over there and what's been going on, the only way to actually curb Putin is through sanctions, because his aims, as much as they are nationalistic, are strictly financial. The ascendancy of the Russian state has totally been reliant on their economic prosperity through the expansion of their oil infrastructure.
Well, I agree to
right
that because
now-
I agree to that because right now because he sounds like a guy who needs money. Putin's like, oh man, we got to rob a bank, don't we? This is where Putin's at, I think. So he's literally robbing a bank. But here's the problem with the sanctions that I find the problem with the sanctions is that they're like, you crashed a car, you're not allowed to have the Chips Ahoy cookies anymore. In the
Right.
cabinet.
Well, I'm not saying that these sanctions are going to be enough, but I don't think he's hard up because they're making a killing with oil, and they have been. As long as they have a relationship with China,
a killing.
Oh yeah, well they were making a killing without oil. We're talking about.
They're murdering.
So, like, have you ever seen the picture of Reagan in Russia, circa like 1980 or 81, like taking a tour?
We could go to war.
It's like a Time magazine photo, and in the photo, in the entourage surrounding him and escorting him is Vladimir Putin.
Oof.
Looking not too different than he does right now. So
Did he have a shirt on?
He had like maybe a polo or some.
Was he riding a horse with a machine gun? Now I'm talking about the horse having the machine gun. The horse is holding a machine gun while he's riding on Vladimir Putin's shirtless back. Is how I picture it. Is that?
No, the horse is probably riding an alligator, and the alligator has a machine gun in its jaws.
Yeah, we're fighting a shark with a bear.
Yes. No, the bear is actually pulling the carrots the horse is riding on with the alligator.
Right. Yeah.
They have subjugated the bear.
I imagine.
But
I mean, my imagination's running wild right now. Go ahead.
What's the name of this pipeline deal that Germany just canceled?
They just canceled it. Was it? Germany can cancel things too. Jeez, this cancel culture is going crazy.
The Nord Stream 2.
Oh, yeah.
So it's across the Black Sea. I was reading about this yesterday, and one of the things going on is that they created the Nord Stream pipeline to supply fossil fuels to the European states. And so as a result of that pipeline, they are currently providing, I believe, 33% of the fossil fuels that they use in continental Europe. So there's resistance to this because the more financially dependent Europe becomes on Russia, the more power Putin has. So that he can do whatever he wants because he can just cut them off, which he has done.
That's the thing, Will. That's the thing. They're like, hey, don't go into Ukraine to build your oil pipeline. Yeah, we'll buy your oil. That's fine. Yeah, sure. Okay.
Well,
even though you shouldn't do that, don't do that. But we'll buy your oil. Fine. Okay.
But there's more.
But wait.
So
there's more.
So that's the Nord Stream. That's the first pipeline. That's the one that's running. There's a second one. There's Nord Stream 2 that's also running the same route. That's already completed. but it hasn't been approved.
Gotcha.
And so if they approve that, he has more fossil fuels that he can send to Europe that they can then consume and then be more reliant. And so there's been a protest against that, and the leaders have lobbied against allowing Russia to have access to those markets, because what are we going to do if he says, I don't like what you're doing, I'm going to turn off the fossil fuels, and now you're without power.
Yeah.
So that's an undercurrent of what's going on. There is an existing pipeline that goes through the Ukraine, or Ukraine.
Right.
I've been told that we're not supposed to say the Ukraine. And
That's
the
like
story
saying
with
the
that
Canada.
is, there's an issue.
The People's
dating back
Republic
to
of Canada.
2006.
Yeah.
And Russia accused the Ukrainians of stealing fuel from the pipeline and not paying for it.
Yeah.
And so there's been a conflict over that. So
I see.
on the first hand, like a lot of the leverage that they're going to gain outside of the nationalistic aim of restoring the Soviet Union to its glory, because he is, like, we had to remember, he is from that generation. He was raised up in that. That's how he ascended politically. So we can't think of him as anything other than he's the inheritor of that
The heir apparent.
Like the Cold War we thought was over, no, it's still been going on, you know, and he operates like the intelligence agent that he is.
The dopey intelligence
if he
agent.
came,
Who is the symbiote?
if he came out of intelligence, then he knows the impact and the power of behavioral science.
Oh,
And
yeah.
instead of us thinking of him as a warmongering general, we have to think that anything he's doing, there is a residual effect that's going to impact the success of his aims. And it's funny, but there's a certain amount of knowledge that being old grants you that a lot of people who are in their 30s now just aren't privy to, because they weren't old enough or alive to see it. But the reason that the countries were able to break away from Russia when the Berlin Wall went down, that it didn't happen immediately after. That was just in Germany. But
you know, the Berlin Wall is always a ridiculous scenario, because Reagan, remember that the 80s when Reagan, listen, I don't remember the 80s, it was way before I was born, but in the 80s, Reagan was like this. He stood next to a wall that was toppling. It was falling down. It was at 45 degrees, right? And then Reagan stepped in and said, hey, Gorbachev, tear down that wall. And then boom, it fell. And everybody's like, yay, Reagan, you brought down the Berlin Wall. All the Republicans today who canonize Reagan, who say Reagan was a great president. It's like, no, he was kind of a douche. And he took the opportunity to stand for the photo op of the Berlin Wall falling and being like, hey, knock that down. And there's a lot of people like that in the world, where they just kind of step in and they take the credit for something that's already happening, you know? Welcome to corporate America. But yeah, go ahead.
Oh, yeah.
The Berlin Wall. That was a
But okay, let's pretend you're older than you are. Do you remember when they had the failed coup to remove Gorbachev from office?
I don't remember that, but it sounds like it sounds plausible.
That is what destabilized the USSR to allow these other states to get independence. For 2.5 days, people thought that the then Prime Minister of the Soviet Union, Mikhail Gorbachev, was dead, because they literally came to the capital with tanks and came to get him. But somehow or another, he escaped the coup attempt and resurfaced in 3 days, and the coup fell apart. And at that point, the Soviet Union as we knew it collapsed.
He said, you can bring me in hot, or you can bring me in cold.
Go ahead.
But that was several years after the Berlin Wall. And so they were going through a lot of economic struggle at that time. And that would be one of the cases where sanctions, I'm doing finger quotes, they won the conflict.
They're like, hey,
because
Well, did they win the Cold War? Is this the longer game?
That, I would argue that it's still on. And
I'll get to tell you
and what
something.
has happened is,
Yeah.
I'm gonna say, and every trick and ploy that we could have used to make people work against their own best interests within their own country, the discord and upheaval has been applied to us.
Yeah.
But and we're experiencing it now with, like,
ladies and gentlemen, if you want to
if
join the
you-
Discord, just subscribe on Twitch. Go ahead.
good segue. If you look at the amount of people trying to reconcile or justify or ignore what's happening, and not view it as something harrowing and disturbing, and not acknowledge that it's been catalyzed and it's been encouraged by the previous administration and a lot of their maneuvers to destabilize NATO and the UN. Regardless of the things that they've done wrong, the one leverage we had in Eastern Europe was the presence of NATO and our alliance with them to strengthen that institution. And every attempt was made to try and dissolve it. Which catalyzed.
I don't know no NATO Jacobs. I don't know no. You know NATO Jacobs? You know NATO Jacobs? I don't know no NATO Jacobs. You don't know no NATO Jacobs? I don't know no NATO. Listen, rest in peace, Bernie Mac. Listen, I'm gonna play that clip.
Was that in Head of State?
That was in Head of State. Yes, it was. I don't know.
Oh man! Congratulations, you were the first person who has ever in my life referenced Head of State.
Well, it's a great.
I never met NATO. I don't know nothing about it. I don't talk about people behind their back.
NATO is the North Atlantic Treaty
But
Organization.
you didn't say that. I thought you were talking about the guy. I know this guy named NATO Jacobs.
But you have to know these things if you're running for public
Do you know
office.
NATO Jacobs?
I
Do you
don't-
know NATO
I
Jacobs?
know what NATO is.
Do you know NATO Jacobs?
I'm sorry, I haven't met the gentleman.
That's what I said. Did I say that, man? You don't know nothing about NATO? I don't know nothing about NATO.
It's
This
classic.
sequence makes that movie. His press tour.
It's classic. It's classic.
Oh man! And then when he goes around slapping people.
Oh man, you know that also reminds me of the Chappelle Show. Don't drop that cake. Don't drop the yellow cake. And they're holding the yellow cake.
But
That's what it all. This all reminds me of hilarious comedy. And you know the secret of comedy. Well, what I always say is it's got to be funny. Go ahead. Just keep
see,
it.
I know another
punchy.
secret about comedy.
What's the secret to comedy? It's a benign violation. That's what it is. A benign
That's another way
violation.
to put it. But like,
Yeah.
it's either gonna make you laugh or it's gonna make you cry.
Comedy makes you cry. Makes you laugh so hard you cry. Am I
It's
right?
the same mechanism. It's just depends on how the person is primed.
Right.
if
So
you
instead
prime
of
a
having,
person to take it,
it's either a feather or an onion. Okay. Listen, I'm making the show punchy.
So I
making it
saw-
snappy.
a meme from
Yeah.
one of my my nephews, and the meme was about to delete my Call of Duty account so that the U.S. government don't draft me once they see my skills.
That's true. They did that. In fact, they did actually that. They did the last Starfighter plot. If you guys, ladies and gentlemen, if you did not see Walt Disney's The Last Starfighter featuring the S word and mentions of Playboy magazines, which is very risque for Disney. In the 80s, there's a movie called The Last Starfighter, and this guy who's just really excellent at this game called Starfighter, and he could play it in the arcade, and all the kids gather around him, and he's like, "You're really good at this game," and he actually beats the arcade game, and then not but hours later, an alien comes down from outer space. Now, see, the game is where you're fighting aliens in a starship. An alien comes down from outer space and says, "You're so good at this game. You're one of the best at this game in the universe. We need to recruit you because this is basically how you fly our starfighter jets, and you're going to be a great starfighter pilot." It's a great story plot for a movie, and it has like a lot of computer-generated graphics in it. For the 80s, it was great. And that's literally what the armed forces has done in the United States. They check people's scores. And they monitor people on Twitch and how they play. And then they go to their house and knock on their door and they say, "Hey, do you want to go kill people for real? We've got drones. You could fly the drones and kill people for real. That's what they do. And kids are like,
They
yeah,
even
why
had
not?
their. I think they just took their game offline. There's been more than one state-sponsored video game first-person shooter, but the one they were most closely associated with, I forgot what it was called. I don't know if it was called America's Army or what it was called, but it just
Yeah, go ahead. Sorry. That was a shout out.
they recently they just recently turned it off. Because they probably don't need it anymore because there's so many other games that they can just monitor instead.
I think there was like an actual legal action against the fact that they were doing that. They were like,
Oh.
you can't do that.
Oh.
There might have been some kind of legal repercussions or something. But yeah,
But
It's crazy.
as far as sanctions, the power of sanctions now, if
power
you
of
hit
now.
them in enough places
yeah,
financially,
right.
if monetary gain and status is what they're using as their leverage, if you cripple that, then you here's my opinion. I don't think if they get a foothold in the government and they remove the people who are in power and install people in Ukraine, they're not going to let go of that. That war is over.
It's not going to be very. It's not a very beatable war for Ukraine. They're not going to win. It's sad. It's like it's an iron fist versus a net. It's very sad. It's crazy though.
I think.
How about that imagery of all of those paratroopers going into Ukraine? All the Russian paratroopers
I
coming
gotta
out
be
the sky.
honest, I haven't watched any of the footage of the news. The only thing I have
terrifying.
seen are two images. One image is a family who a jet flies over their farm and fires a missile, and the other one is wreckage from what was supposed to be a Russian plane that was shot out of the sky, falling. So those are two things that people have posted in Discord that I'm a member of because I've been bad about actually going out and watching the news. I'll read things to stay informed, but like a long time ago, I tried to get myself out of the habit of watching footage of stuff like that because I realized it was sensitizing me to the horror of what was being depicted.
Well,
And I
that's the
was like,
thing that
some stuff I never want to get used to seeing.
it's really terrifying. So yeah, it's terrifying. It's crazy because Twitter is one of those places where you can see stuff instantaneously. It's the one true form of media, even though it could be completely abused at the same time because it's so raw. But there were some really crazy things I was seeing on Twitter as it was happening. Like it'd be posted 5 minutes later and you'd just see things blowing up and it was crazy. Ooh, it's just really, 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 really awful. We cannot, this aggression cannot stand, man. Yeah.
There's going to be a lot of nightmares. I used to have invasion nightmares when I was a kid, and you can just blame it on Red Dawn. But just the idea of that happening.
Red Dawn is a terrifying movie. It was one of the scariest movies I saw as a kid. Red Dawn, the Russians invade. The kids have to go run into the woods and defend the country, and they all get killed. Spoiler alert. They all get killed. We don't win.
Yeah.
And it's, I mean, I guess there's like a little bit of hope at the end where we hear that but whatever. That was the first.
I mean,
the first movie I saw. That was the first movie I saw where I learned that there would be sort of code words on the radio. You know what I mean? Where like there's a part of the movie where they're listening to the radio and there's a guy on the radio going, "Their chair is against the wall. The chair is against the wall." And I was like, what the heck are they doing? And it's sort of to notify people that something's not right. It's crazy.
but it has a samurai ending. I wouldn't. It's worth acknowledging that it's got a samurai film's ending. It isn't just they get defeated. It's a Pyrrhic victory. It's a victory at too high a cost. Because they do accomplish what they set out to do.
Now watch the one with C. Thomas Howell and Patrick Swayze and unfortunately Charlie Sheen, but also Jennifer Grey. Do not watch the one with Chris Hemsworth.
Tom
I hear
Cruise's kid. That's with Tom Cruise's kid. Yeah.
Tom Cruise's kid. Suri?
I forget his
Oh,
name.
yeah.
No, his
He's got like 20 kids. I forgot.
Yeah,
Yeah.
they got the ones they adopted, him and Nicole Kidman. There's
Does he
some
look kinda
other
like
people
me?
that were not.
That kid?
That's the kid I'm talking about, but like it's a very loose resemblance.
Yeah,
Like
just-
the key attributes for Cyndi Lauper are there.
Right,
Put it
exactly.
that way.
You know, it's funny because I feel like people who are, let's just call them white, they would say, "You look just like that guy," and I'd be like, "Really though? Do I though? Do I really look just like that guy?"
You're not pulling punches. You are
I'm not-
pulling punches.
I'm not pulling punches. I'm telling it like it is in my life experience for sure. People are like, "Brown, curly hair, you look just like him." Okay, that's your criteria.
Yeah.
None of my facial features or
Same
anything
here.
else. Yeah. No, you know the deal.
Ice Cube, Lawrence Fishburne. Let me keep going. Dennis Rodman, Scottie Pippen, Greg Oden, LeBron James.
I was at a party where there was I was at a party where there was this dude and he's black and he's a comedian, and this girl was like, "You look kind of like Tracy Morgan." And he looked nothing like the distinct looking Tracy Morgan. And it was just, I was just shaking my head. I was like, I can't. I don't even know what. And I was like, so I just jumped in and I was like, "Look at me, I'm Lenny Kravitz. Hey." I was trying to distract from this guy being kind of just shaking his head.
Right. So
And
I
also,
just
Tracy
pulled
Morgan
this
is
up.
not a flattering comparison. I don't think if you were compared to Tracy
I don't
Morgan.
think anybody's aiming for it, but if that's the best you can do.
Yeah. Well, I got Lawrence Fishburne. I get Lawrence Fishburne all the time. Look at
it's
me. I
just
look just like Lawrence Fishburne. It's like we're twins.
It's painful, man.
Yeah.
What
That's the
was
worst.
Chappelle say? "Oh, this racism is killing me."
Yeah, this racism is, it's killing me inside.
So here's some of the other actors in Red Dawn that, for me, like give it that extra clout because like they're not big in this movie, but they're in this movie.
Yeah.
Powers Booth, Harry Dean
Powers
Stanton,
Harry
Ron
Dean-
O'Neill, freaking Superfly.
Harry Dean Stanton was great. He's like 900 years old when he died. Powers
I think
Booth,
he's no
yeah.
longer with us. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think
Powers
neither
Booth.
of them were with us. Powers Booth was pretty recently because I remember he was on Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D.
Yeah, that dude, Powers Booth, man, he's been around forever. He's just been around forever. What a name,
2017.
Powers. What did you call him for sure?
Yeah.
Pal? Yeah. Powers Booth.
I got the powers. Dun, dun, dun,
I
dun, dun, dun,
have the power. Yeah.
It's
You know
like,
what's funny?
man, is that really?
Powers Booth. That guy's just a guy. He puts on hats and mustaches and has a career. That's what I'm looking to do.
And did you say Leah Thompson?
Leah
'Cause
Thompson
you
is also
said
in that
Jennifer
list.
Grey, but did you?
I neglected Leah Thompson. You never leave out Leah Thompson. You should never leave
Thank
her
you
out.
for saying it and for allowing me not to have to say it for you.
Also, nobody puts baby in a corner. I sat next to Leah Thompson at Black Market Cafe on Ventura Boulevard. Actually, Lori was there too as well. We sat next to Leah Thompson, and she was there. And that's the end of the story. There's nothing more to that story. We sat next to her, and I was like, "That's Leah Thompson." That's the fun thing about LA, because you could eat a sandwich and be staring at Lawrence Fishburne. If you see me. If I'm sitting across from you. Oh boy.
You just triggered a painful memory, but not in a bad way.
Yeah.
It's funny, but it's embarrassing for the people. Remember when Sam Jackson was getting interviewed? I can't remember if it was on CNN or not, but they asked him about a commercial he was in, and it was the one that Lawrence Fishburne's in, and Sam got him. He didn't let it go.
Oh yeah, that was a good one. That's a good one. He's like, yeah, we don't. It was just like, oh, you thought it was me? Okay. Yeah, that's a great moment. Well, yeah, he's basically like this.
Enough is enough. I have had it with these monkey fighting snakes on this Monday to Friday plane. Snakes.
Yeah, I do like that. Yeah, I I got a story. I've told this before on the show, but I got to work on a Capital One commercial like 5 or 6 years ago as a background artist. Okay? I'm not just an extra, I'm a background artist. I don't do it anymore. Listen, I'm too good for background work. I'm a principal actor. So I got to stand right next to the three leads of that commercial, which were incredible. Samuel L. Jackson, who I mentioned, Charles Barkley, and Spike Lee. I got to stand next to these three guys all day and listen to their conversation like a fly on the wall, like this close. Because my cue was the camera comes down and it's like on the back of my head, and then I walk past them, and then they walk forward and deliver their lines, and then I like walked up these stairs, and I looked at it as a day of just do get my steps in. But then I was listening to Samuel L. Jackson, and it's like exactly how you would imagine it. You've got the little aloof looking Spike Lee. He's very little. This is part of his whole brand. He's a tiny man, and he's just staring into space with his little stare and his hat and his glasses, and he's just like, no, He just seems like a little grumpy little man, And then you got Charles Barkley. He was just very happy to be there. He was just let me ask you, Sam, about that movie you were in. I really like that movie, Deep Blue Sea. You were in that movie, Deep Blue Sea. And Sam Jackson was like, when I was in, I can't do a Sam Jackson impression, but he's like, yeah, I was in that movie, see, and then the shark came up and killed me in the middle of the speech. So I was standing there, and he's like literally describing the movie Deep Blue Sea. Spoiler alert: Sam Jackson dies in a hilarious way in that movie. It's great. He's like rallying the troops, and then the shark just eats him in the middle of his speech. It's hilarious. Just comes up out of the water, grabs him, he's gone, dead. But it's so funny because. So I sat there for like hours listening to Samuel L. Jackson describe every movie he's in. Like he just loves him. He was feeling himself. He loves himself. Samuel L. Jackson loves every movie he's done, and will describe every movie to everybody who's listening. And basically Charles Barkley was eating it up because he's like, yeah, I like that part. That part when you was in that movie with the other guy, that was really good. I like that. And then Sam Jackson was like, yeah, And then I heard this conversation, which was incredible. It was right before the Hateful Eight premiere. The Hateful Eight was going to come out, and famously, Samuel L. Jackson is in almost every Spike Lee movie. Also, famously, Samuel L. Jackson is in almost every Quentin Tarantino movie. Now, famously, Spike Lee and Quentin Tarantino are at odds. Quentin Tarantino often uses the N-word in his scripts many times. And Spike Lee does not like the fact that a white man puts the N-word so much in his scripts and then has black people say the word and all that. So he's got a legitimate grievance from his point of view. However, Samuel L. Jackson was... I always pause during that part of the song, sorry. Samuel L. Jackson was... it's weird, it's instinctual. I hear this song play and I have to stop. I have to do a rest. Samuel L. Jackson was literally trying to negotiate a truce. In that moment, with Spike Lee, I'm watching Samuel L. Jackson make a truce, try to negotiate a truce between Spike Lee and Quentin Tarantino because he was trying to get Spike Lee to go to the premiere for The Hateful Eight. I'm not even joking. Hand to my ceiling. Sam Jackson's like, now listen, I want you to come to the premiere. And Spike is staring into space. No, I'm a little curmudgeon. No, thank you. And then he's like, yeah, but you got to understand. He's like, no, I don't like that he uses the N-word. And then he's like, but it's of the time. It's the vernacular. It's how people spoke back then. It's like Samuel Jackson's trying to say he's using it in a way that it was actually used. He's not afraid of it. He's going to use it in the movies. He's not going to whitewash history. And then Spike Lee was just like, no. And he's like, if I get you, and then he literally said this, if I could get Tarantino to come to Black Klansman, will you come to the Hateful Eight? And I was just like thinking to myself, I cannot believe I'm watching this right now. I don't know if it was Black Klansman or whatever Spike Lee did before. It might have been Black Klansman. So what movies did Spike Lee do? Because they both had a premiere.
Most well received recently. Before that, all right, I got IMDb up as it is. I'll fish it out.
I'll tell you though, I was watching this go down, and I was like, thinking to myself, "Oh my God, I cannot believe I'm watching this right now."
Yeah, you're potentially watching a historic moment.
Yeah, historic moment, but it didn't work because, little grumpy Spike Lee was like, "No, I don't want to. I ain't gonna do that. No." He's like, "I'm not gonna do that. No, that's crazy. I'm not gonna go to." He's got that New York accent.
All right, so okay. In 2015, he had Chirac come out.
Okay, it wasn't that.
And then between that and Black Klansman was nothing that any of us would be aware of. Like there was a movie called Pass Over that I do not remember at all, but it's credited to him in 2018, the same year as Black Klansman.
Yeah. Then it must have been.
Looking at it,
maybe it's even longer ago. It might have been Black Klansman.
I forgot when Hateful Eight came out.
When the Hateful Eight came out, because it was like 3 months before Hateful Eight. 2015. So yeah, it was a few months.
So that would have been Chirac. Chirac was what Spike Lee had out.
So it's crazy. Or it might have been a documentary that he was in. I don't know, but it was crazy. I was just like, I can't believe I'm privy to this conversation right now. But I can tell you all about it now, which is a great story. It's a great Hollywood story that I've seen some crazy stuff go down here.
Tamer than what I expected.
Yeah.
Because I could see Spike issuing death threats.
Spike was not having it. Spike
his
said,
distaste for Tarantino is quite palpable.
Mm-hmm.
And I get it. And it's part of, I think, his offense is he has his white characters using it in the true derogatory sense of it.
Yes.
Like, my own experience is, like, most of my life, I had never had anyone call me that as an insult, particularly outside of my race. So I didn't know how I felt. Like, I remember at one point I heard like a small child say it to try and get a rise out of a special needs kid in my school. They called him that. They wouldn't dare call someone who they thought was had their mental faculties about them. And that was probably when I was like 12.
That's horrible. It's unconscionable. I have had kids in the town I grew up in walk right up to my face and say, "You are an N-word." Doesn't feel good. It doesn't feel good. You go, and then like they'll say, because I'm light-skinned, they'd be like, "Are you an N-word or a sand N-word?"
See, it's sad, but the first time I heard the second one, it was somebody black who said it. I didn't know that was a term people used until I was like 22 years old, and somebody said that, and I was like, "What?" Like, and the fact that he was saying it, like, what the hell is wrong with you that you would adopt that language that's used against you? To belittle somebody else, and it's just like, man, that racism is powerful.
This racism's killing me inside. Oh,
it's some strong stuff, man. You need to cut that with some water and some ice.
Yeah, you need to put some. Can you put that on the rocks, please? Racism on the rocks. I find it. I find racism horrible, and also war is bad. We're breaking new ground here. You know what else? Comedy. The secret to it is gotta be funny. Gotta be funny. Oh, racism. It's everywhere. But I feel like if the darker the skin you got in this world, the worse you have it to the rest of the world. It's just there's a scapegoat, and there's a scapegoat for everybody. And when people are like, oh, I mentioned this before on the show, but it's like, we should have, the white folks are like, we needed a white state. The United States needs to be white like it was supposed to be or whatever. It's like, okay, it never was. Never, ever was. Not once. Not once at all. Maybe in your brain you thought that, but there was like all of the people who were living here who were not white, and all of the people who came over at the same time as slaves who were not white. You're just gonna erase them from history as part of the building blocks, the unpaid workers, the tortured and killed and murdered.
Short answer is yes.
Yeah.
They are going to erase them from history. They're actively doing it.
It's incredible. It's just like you're literally standing on the shoulders of other humans, literally, pretty much, and like you got to pretend that you're that tall. No.
Well, the key facet of racism has always been those people you're standing on aren't people anyway, so they don't count.
Yeah.
Here's a weird twist on this whole Russia thing that I think how it relates in a certain way to the whole subject of colonization over here is you have a situation where, like, legitimately no human has any real claim over any section of the planet. It's not ours. We're here.
No.
The bugs have just as much right to this planet as we do. There are more of them and they populate more of the planet. But once you decide that you want to assert that authority, then you lay claim, and to hell with whoever was there before or whoever comes after. Anything you can find to designate them as other, you do, and that becomes the basis for you then taking what you want and being able to disregard the humanity of the people that you're killing or oppressing. And
that's... I find this to be not a universal thing. I think there's a lot of people in this world that are reverse. They don't understand the idea of responsibility or like taking. I don't want to use the word ownership when we're talking about slavery, but listen, there's no pun there. It's just like people don't. They sit there, and I've dealt with humans like this. I've dealt with people like this, and I cannot do it anymore, and I will not do it anymore. I vow not to. But people think in reverse. They say, if you tell them that they hurt your feelings or that they did something wrong, they go this way. They go the wrong way. They say, well, I'm a good person, therefore what I did was not wrong. So they don't think that what they're doing is right, but they did it. But they will not claim that it was hurtful. They will not own that it is hurtful or that it was wrong to do, because they in their mind start from the inside out and say, well, I like to think of myself as a good person because good is what you're supposed to be. So I'm just going to automatically say that I'm good, and therefore anything I do isn't bad. When it's actually quite the opposite. What you do is who you are. To the rest of the world anyway. You could think you're a good person. You could think you're doing the right thing. But when you do the wrong thing, that's who you are. That's what you is.
Yeah.
Not taking accountability. Thank you, Judella. But that is the thing. Like, you are your actions. You are a culmination. If you want to be held in esteem, do esteemable things. Do good things to be good. Yeah. You don't just start out, you don't just say I'm good and therefore nothing I do can't be bad. It's like you got to own your actions. You got to sit there and say, take accountability for what you're doing and how it affects other people. But people can't, there are people who just simply cannot do that. And, speaking of like colonizers, the people who have taken over just like you said, if you sit there and say, well, the only way I can justify this is by saying, well, they're not fully people anyway. They're 3/5 of a man. Black people are 3/5 of a vote of a human. It's like, okay, well, then you're just trying to make this right in your head that that's okay. You're trying to justify your actions by But I listened to a thing today, a speech today, motivational speech. I get up every day and I listen to motivational speeches because I'm trying to get the show off the ground. I'm trying to launch it to the stratosphere with Aristotle Full Throttle. Remember to subscribe and buy a t-shirt. Check this out. There are people who say, and I believe this, and I've always believed this. I've said this on the show many times. People are like, I want to build the tallest building in town. I would like to build the tallest building in town by building the tallest building in town. Other people say, I want to build the tallest building in town by tearing down all of the other buildings. So you got to sit there and do the esteemable thing. You got to do the thing. You got to keep your eye on the prize, and you got to outdo yourself and not try to undermine others and say that the reason I'm the tallest in town is because I destroyed everyone else. No, you got to own and you got to become the thing. So it's really, 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 really. Yes, Studio 8H, I have t-shirts. You can buy them down just below on the Twitch page. If you go down and click on it, you'll see that there's t-shirts available.
Yeah.
Jude Della says people need to understand impact is greater than intent. You can cause harm without even realizing it. Yes. That's indeed very true. Like when someone says, that's exactly another way of putting and more elucidating the point I was making, which is, you could push a button and kill 20 people, right? If you push a button and you kill 20 people, and you go, well, I didn't mean to. Well, sure you didn't. But 20 people are dead now because of you. So it's like, but you know what I mean? It's like you could be walking down the street. Here's a better example. That might be an extreme example. You can drive an accident, a car accident. You're driving, you run through a stop sign, and you hit someone on a bike. Okay? You hit someone on a bike, they break their leg. You can't just say, well, I didn't mean to hit you. You got to take accountability for what you did. You ran the stop sign, you hit somebody. You ought to feel sorry. If you are a human with empathy and remorse, you should feel sorry. You should be like, oh my God, that was my fault. I am sorry. But if you just be like, I run a red light, a stop sign, and I hit somebody, but I didn't mean to do that there because I'm a good person. Don't mean anything. Doesn't mean it. Doesn't mean anything.
Speaking of which, and segueing into something you mentioned before, so accountability, right?
Yeah.
And race relations, and authoritarianism.
But you don't have to take my word for it. Yeah, go ahead.
So something happened yesterday that got little to no attention that I happened to catch in my feed when I was actually going through my little Twitter that is significant for this country. The 3 officers who witnessed the murder of George Floyd were found guilty on federal charges of denying his civil rights.
Good. Because they were partly responsible for sure.
So, but in all of this going on, nobody knew. It got zero coverage because of, and I mean that doesn't make any amends for the horror that's going on right now and what is happening in Ukraine. But it just, the conspiracy person in my brain is like, all right, so I'm going there. I'm going to go there, and we may pay for this later. But there is an affinity towards Russia and white supremacy.
Yeah, because there are a lot of white people in Russia. I don't know if you've seen the pictures.
Oh yeah.
I don't know if you've had a white Russian, but there's lots of them. Most of them, really.
Mm-hmm. This I know to be true.
And also.
Yeah, well, that's just like your opinion, man.
Speaking of white Russians, go ahead.
I was gonna say double dip in there. You didn't have to call your shot. I got it. That could have been a good trivia question.
That could have been. That's true.
You double dip. But yeah. So if you're a white supremacist out there, and I don't know, we'll have to ask one in the audience if there's one out there who can confirm.
Now, if you're a white supremacist out there, call in. We want to talk to you. We want to hear what's going through your white head. Or if you're like, if you're the blind white supremacist like Dave Chappelle played in that sketch, which is classic, you can call in too. The blind racist.
But
he got a divorce.
I imagine
why did he get a divorce? Amazing. Because his wife. Amazing. It's a great sketch. Watch it.
She's a lover.
Yeah.
She had jungle fever. Spike Lee.
Yeah. I'm not a white supremacist, but I can play one on Aristotle TV. Good. Yeah. Go ahead.
So, long story short, they had a loss yesterday because the two institutions that we would argue that they are influenced by or have infiltrated.
Yeah.
And make an argument that there are three institutions, major institutions in this country they've infiltrated, but one is the law enforcement, and the other, and they aspire towards a totalitarian state that's dominated by the, white elitism that Russia has manifested. So you win some, you lose some. Kind of a day for them yesterday, because we held law enforcement accountable.
Right.
So it's just an interesting juxtaposition in the world of racists.
Studio H's. This channel is an obvious hotbed for white supremacists. Yes, it's the hottest new place. The hottest new club in town for white supremacy is Aristotle Full Throttle. Come on down. We'll talk to you. Let's have a chat.
I mean, you never know, man. There's some sleeper agents out there. I wonder a lot.
Okay.
You got to get to know your enemy.
Recently, I was on a date with a lady who happens to be a white lady, and she said the N-word, but like the full word. She's like but she's
Rogan. Was it Joanne Rogan?
But she said it in the. She says, I don't like say the word, and then she said the word, and I thought to myself, check please. But also I thought yeah. She's like, it's not like I say the word N-word. I was just like,
what
really?
Was she trying to justify that she had to say that?
Listen, some people are just oblivious. Because they don't. Well, I'm flabbergasted. I'm at a loss. I'm nonplussed. I have no way to describe what goes through someone's head who says like, listen, I'm not someone who like says that and then says the word.
It sounds like an explanation for the other racist things you do.
Yeah.
It's like, I don't say that, but every now and then I look at a black kid and I spit at him. It seems like that's where that statement was going.
The worst part about racism that's killing me inside is that it was when I talk to people who are I don't know if they're not very many close friends, but they'll just be like, oh, my family, they say all this racist stuff all the time, and I'm always like, well, then what do you say?
Right,
they're just like, oh, I'm just like, oh, I roll my eyes at it. You're like, okay, well, they're gonna keep saying it. So but
call me on the carpet, because today when I was working in one of the buildings I work at, I heard two teachers talking about students. Now, they didn't say anything about the race of the students, but I do know the racial makeup of the student population in the building, and heard them talking about, oh yeah, he's gonna end up in jail, or he's gonna kill somebody.
Oh wow!
And their age demographic for the kids that they work with are 3rd through 5th grade. So these kids are 8, 9, and 10.
That's not a good setting them up for success right there.
Right, yeah. And there's a disconnect because the population that we have versus the people who are teaching them, they're not the same.
Right.
And a lot of these people, they like the same group of teachers we're having a discussion about in their community whether or not they're going to make their kids wear masks with their kids asked not to, which was a conversation. And then the conditions under which they decide, oh, well, screw the mask.
Right.
We'll let our kids wear them as long as they fit A, B, C, D criteria. It's like, okay. So, hearing that,
that's frustrating. That's crazy. It's just, clearly there's like learned helplessness. There's setting people up for failure. It's all there. I want to circle back to the... circle back to the affinity for Russia, and there is that whole contingent of, I would say, MAGA, the Fox News watching audience, who I would also say is low key, if not high key, racist, white supremacist agenda. Like that whole group, loving Russia. Yes, there is this complete implicit. Yeah, they're a bunch of white folks, and we should get on their side as a superpower because what do we got? We got China. Do we want China to be the superpower? And it's like, well, it's kind of, there's an existential thing going on, I believe, for white Americans who are like, oh wait, we're gonna be the minority in 25 years or whatever, in 50 years, we're gonna be the minority in the United States. There's an existential threat, and whether legitimate or not, the reactionary response is to be completely like white supremacist and also, so exactly, they see like, oh well, Russia's like a whole country of white people. I see, I paused again for that part of the song. Russia's a whole country of white people. That's what I wish America was, and like let's get on their side because it's a bunch of white people, and I think there is something to that. I haven't really formulated what it is, but I'm intuiting that. Yeah. Between
that and the affinity they have for traditional machismo and hyper masculinity. So they project a lot of that, and that appeals to a lot of insecurities that people have. And then the other weird thing about that whole thing is like they play both sides of the fence with it, because for the longest time we've used the threat of the hyper-aggressive Russian archetype as our rival, our imminent threat to get people to side with the same conservative military hawkishness.
What you talk about
in the past,
Drago.
Like that's the pop culture
Zangief
version, but like the whole fear of nuclear war, because Russians, like Sting said, I hope the Russians love their children too. Right? Beautiful song.
Wow.
But like that was the angle, and now they pivoted, and it's contrary to what they stood for. When I say they, I'm talking about our conservatives, as they're traditionally known, but there are different breeds of conservatives out there, so we can't throw them all in the same pot.
I know. There's a lot of people who are governed. Yeah. I mean, there's different parts of the bass brain. The bass brain. I play bass. There's different part of like the amygdala. The amygdala that I feel like are active in different political parties. And like the majority of people, I would say, if not all people, are governed by our most primitive form layer of brain, the amygdala. Like we're governed by that. So there's like the fight or flight, the F or fight or flight response, it's just, and it's just, when it comes down to it, we are going to, you got the base brain, the amygdala, and then you got like the middle brain, which is sort of like the go between the prefrontal cortex, the higher brain, the thinking brain, the Homo sapien part where we like think about thinking, like that's the part of the brain that we think we are. We think we're that person who's like, let me reason this out and think about. But no. The thing in the middle, the amygdala, the part that's the F, the fight, or the FFF, like that part of the brain is like, I want to do these things. Yeah. Fornicate. Yeah, fornicate, fight or flight. That part of the brain's like, I want to do these things. And then the top layer of the brain's like, let me intellectualize why I should do all of these things. This is like, you could sit there and intellectualize it all day, but what's pushing you to do it is that central brain, that little central lizard brain of yours, of ours, of every human being's, is just like, do this now, go eat. And then you're like, maybe I should go to Taco Bell. Here's why. Like, it's just how it, I wish we I wish we could just be okay with that thought or at least be aware of it and then pretend. I don't know. That's what it is. I think we just pretend to not be governed by that. And then we think we're better than those people because they're like, you're governed by that. And it's like, no, everybody sort of is. I feel like I could be just painting everybody. I could be whitewashing the Russians, but they're already white, aren't they?
I would say maybe the whole thing is we have different means of processing those impulses. And your resources in life allow you to process them in ways that are more flattering than they are for some other people. Just like, being on a food island where, all right, you have an impulse to eat, you're hungry. Maybe it's true hunger, maybe it's just that you're stressed. But you live somewhere where all you have is a couple of gas stations and fast food, and you don't have like a Whole Foods or something.
Right.
So you eat junk.
I need
Whole
Foods, please. Yeah.
Or or you live in an agrarian society where everything is fresh and raw anyway, so you don't have to worry about obesity and diabetes as a result. But
I prefer the Whole Foods hot bar. Thank you. Yeah.
Access to everything. Just imagine we have a cognitive challenge because we could do the right thing if we accepted the extra steps, or we can flaunt doing the wrong thing as a privilege that we have. There are some people who eat horribly because it's their freedom, and that's how they reconcile in their mind. But it's still a choice. Like, no matter what, even if we acquiesce to the circumstances, the quote unquote first world problem is we have the choice. We have the impulse, but we can play with that impulse any number of ways. We can do any number of things to affect it. And to apply it to Putin, it's like, look, if he wants Russia to prosper, like he's done it multiple ways. He's undermined the electoral systems in multiple countries and installed people who will work towards his benefit. He's done it that way. He's played the markets and used oil speculation to increase the wealth of the oligarchs in Russia and have them feed that money back into the government so that they could do it even more. He's done it that way. And he's got presented options, said, all right, you know what else I could do? I actually can start a land war, occupy territory that would be beneficial for me as far as the oil aspect of Russia, but also it elevates our status in the world because we just proved, like, look, I just whipped it out. I got the biggest one. Nobody else is going to whip it out? Really? Nobody? Okay, then. You're going to have to play the game by my rules. Pay me. That's what's just happened.
I'm going to leave you with this joke. There's a Palestinian and an Israeli on a plane. They're sitting next to each other. And they know one's a Palestinian, one's an Israeli. The Israeli gets up to go to the bathroom. Sorry. The Palestinian, the Israeli guy gets up to go to the bathroom. And then the Palestinian picks up each one of the Israeli guy's shoes. And he spits in it. He spits in the shoe. Spits in each shoe, and then he puts them down on the floor. He gets up to go to the bathroom. Israeli comes back. He's got a glass of orange juice there. He drinks the orange juice. Israeli said, "Listen, I got you a glass of orange juice, okay? Let's just be friends, okay?" He says that to the Palestinians. The Palestinian guy drinks the whole glass of orange juice. The Israeli guy goes to put his shoes on. And he finds that there's spit in the bottom of his shoes. Each one of his shoes has got a big loogie in it. And he stuck his feet in it. He's like, oh, come on. When is this going to end? When are we going to stop fighting? When are you going to stop spitting in shoes? When will the peeing in the orange juice end? All right. Well, thank you, ladies and gentlemen.
watermelons got layers.
I don't know if I told it right because I heard it when I was very young, but I'll learn it better next time. When will the spitting in the shoes end? When will the peeing in the orange juice end? This is this is the ultimate question. When will the peeing in the orange juice end, ladies and gentlemen? Never. Never. I don't know. Maybe. Hopefully. I think that, all this talk about the lizard brain and the amygdala and all that stuff, I'm like, you know what? Humans do tons of things that are against our nature. We do tons of things that are against our nature. We can reason. Yeah, we can reason out of our animalistic tendencies, or what we claim are animalistic tendencies.
We don't even have to reason out of it.
Yeah.
We can just put it in written documentation and then alienate ourselves from that written documentation. Exactly. And just say, well, these are the rules because they're the rules.
We are a nation of laws. We are governed by the laws that we decide. We create society through an agreement. There's nothing that we're just doing naturally necessarily. We agree. We figure out ways to agree on things. And I got to tell you, I saw the Banksy exhibit last weekend, and it was really powerful. It was really powerful because... And then I rewatched the movie Exit Through the Gift Shop, which I highly recommend. Exit Through the Gift Shop is a great documentary film about how the acquisition of I mean, there's layers to that movie, but the whole thing about Banksy and the street art is to actually disrupt. It's to subvert. It's to get you to think. It's to paint a picture of your modern world in it's like a drop. It's like a splash of reality in the sort of sleep that we sleepwalk through every day. We just go about our business, but then Banksy drops a thing that makes you more aware. That's the beauty of Banksy. He's like, hey everybody, this is going on right now, and then you got to think about it, and you're like, oh man, now I'm thinking about it. Suddenly I'm thinking about things and how they should be, or how they ought to be, or how we can change things. And that's the beauty of Banksy. But then there's that guy, Mr. Brainwash, who just co-opts the aesthetic and sells it for money, which is kind of the whole... It's the antithetical, it's the antithesis, the antithesis of everything that Banksy stands for, and it's kind of genius, and it's in the sense that it's yeah. Anyway, I love y'all. Thank you for hanging out, Studio 8H and Judy and Ismael and Will. Thanks for talking, and everybody who's been here today. I appreciate you. This is gonna be on the podcast. We'll do two-parter on Monday, so you can download the podcast on Spotify. You could check out everything on Aristotle Full Throttle. Just Google it. You click on it, like it, buy a t-shirt. I appreciate it. You're wonderful. You're fantastic. You deserve love. Yep. Everybody deserves to exist. My heart goes out to Ukrainians right now because everyone deserves to live. All right. Bye, everybody.